If you're planning to work hard, save in a 401k, collect Social Security, and retire at 65, I have bad news. That script was never written for you to win. It was written to keep you in motion. Look at the numbers. The typical American has around the price of a mid-range car saved for retirement. Yet the supposed target is over $1 million. That gap isn't a small miscalculation. It's a canyon, and it exists not because you're lazy, undisciplined, or bad with money, but because the rules were set up so the finish line keeps moving. In this video, we're going to pull the mask off the modern retirement story, how Social Security was structured to fall short, how pensions were swapped for 401ks that mainly enrich the financial industry, and how inflation quietly drains your future. Once you see the machinery, you'll never look at normal retirement advice the same way again. We've all been sold the same timeline. Go to school, get a job, contribute to your 401k, pay into Social Security, and one day, magically, you'll step off the treadmill and enjoy decades of carefree retirement. It sounds reasonable, it feels fair, and it's repeated so often it becomes unquestioned truth. But when you zoom out and look at the data, the story falls apart. Most people reach their 50s or 60s with far less saved than the models assume. The gap between what they're told they'll need and what they actually have is enormous. Yet the system's response is always the same. You should have saved more. You should have started earlier. What if that advice is backwards? What if the problem isn't that individuals failed the system, but that the system was optimized around corporate profits, government solvency, and Wall Street fees, not your independence? The modern retirement framework quietly depends on you never fully getting off the hamster wheel. Once you realize that, the messages you've heard your whole life, work longer, save harder, don't question the plan, start to sound less like guidance and more like programming. Social Security is marketed as a sturdy foundation you can lean on in old age. In reality, it was designed from the beginning to be a minimal safety net, not a full retirement income. When the program was created in the 1930s, the official retirement age was higher than the average lifespan. Most people were never expected to collect for long, if at all. Airlines' expectancy climbed. You'd expect the system to adapt by making benefits more generous or lowering eligibility age. Instead, the opposite happened. The full retirement age crept upward. You're being asked to wait longer for benefits that replace only a small slice of your working income. On top of that, the funding structure is pay-as-you-go. Today's workers fund today's retirees. That model only works smoothly when there are many workers supporting each beneficiary. Decades ago, that ratio was healthy. Now, with aging demographics, it's shrinking toward 2 workers for every retiree. Fewer workers, more retirees, and fixed formulas create a predictable result. Projected shortfalls, automatic benefit cut mechanisms, and constant talk of reforms that usually mean higher taxes, later retirement, or both. The math was fragile from the start, and you're the one it falls on. Even if Social Security were fully funded forever, it still wouldn't give you the life you've been led to expect. The program was never intended to replace your full paycheck. Its own formulas aimed to cover only a fraction of what you earned while working. Think about what that means. If your pre-retirement income was, say, $60,000, the program might cover something like 35 to 40% of that at best. You're left with a giant hole that's supposed to be filled by savings, employer plans, or side income. Yet the messaging around Social Security often makes it sound like a guaranteed retirement package. It's not. It's closer to a partial subsidy to keep you from complete collapse. Worse, the benefit formulas don't fully keep up with the real increase in your cost of living. Adjustments are tied to broad inflation measures that often understate the actual rise in housing, food, and healthcare, the very expenses that dominate later life. So even if the checks arrive on time, they buy less and less. The real function of the program is not to give you freedom. It's to keep you barely afloat while you scramble to cover the rest, often by continuing to work far past the age you once imagined. There was a brief era when many workers actually did have something close to a true retirement promise: the defined benefit pension. Under that model, the employer carried the burden. They contributed, they invested, and they guaranteed a monthly payout for life. If markets went sideways, it was their problem, not yours. Then came a quiet revolution. Companies realized those promises were expensive and risky for them. At the same time, a new section of the tax code created the 401k, originally designed as a niche tool for high earners. Corporate America saw an opportunity: shift responsibility from the employer's balance sheet to the employee's shoulders. Over a few decades, pensions faded. The 401k became the default. Instead of a guaranteed benefit, you got a do-it-yourself investment account. You decide how much to contribute. You shoulder the market risk. You hope the balance will be enough. On paper, it sounds empowering. You're in control. In reality, it transferred longevity risk, market risk, and contribution risk from corporations to workers. Companies cut long-term liabilities. Wall Street gained a river of fee-generating assets, and employees were left with an instruction manual and a ticking clock. Defiance account comes up short. The system's answer is simple: you didn't do enough. Let's assume you play by the rules. You start early, you contribute regularly, and you hit the often quoted guidance of saving 10 to 15% of your income. On spreadsheets with smooth average returns and no interruptions, the ending balance can look impressive, sometimes 7 figures in future dollars. But life doesn't follow spreadsheets. People lose jobs, get sick, help family, or go through divorces. Markets crash at the worst possible moments. Inflation surges. Many workers never get close to the ideal contribution rate because housing, childcare, and debt eat their paychecks first. Even when someone manages to accumulate a seemingly large nest egg, the next shock comes when they translate that balance into sustainable yearly income. Withdrawal rules designed to manage longevity and market risk often reduce those big headline numbers to modest monthly amounts, especially after adjusting for inflation and taxes. Put Social Security on top of that, and many people discover their golden years budget looks uncomfortably similar to a constrained working-class lifestyle. They followed the instructions. They did what the brochures and seminars suggested. The truth is, the targets were set in a way that only a small percentage can realistically hit. The rest are blamed individually for failing a structurally unrealistic test. If your retirement accounts are the bucket, inflation is the steady leak at the bottom. You see your balance rising in dollars, but those dollars quietly buy less each year. That difference between nominal growth and real purchasing power is where much of your future disappears. A few percent of inflation might not sound like much, but it compounds relentlessly. Over a couple of decades, it can cut the value of your saved money in half. And that's using official averages, which often understate the actual increase in your personal costs. Unprotected that matter most in later life, medical care, housing, insurance, food, tend to rise faster than the general index. That means your real-world inflation rate can be significantly higher than the number used in most retirement projections. Meanwhile, the largest borrower in the system, the federal government, quietly benefits. Inflation makes old debts cheaper in real terms. Businesses with pricing power can also adjust upward and protect margins. Who doesn't have that power? Wage earners and small savers. They see their time converted into currency that melts slowly, while being told their only defense is save more inside a system calibrated to erode the value of whatever they manage to put away. Look at the incentives and the picture becomes clearer. Governments want tax revenue. Corporations want a large, flexible labor pool. Financial firms want assets that stay invested for decades. None of those goals are served by millions of people becoming genuinely independent at 55. An aging workforce unable to retire on schedule is convenient. It means experienced employees willing to stay longer, often accepting modest wages because they're afraid of the alternative. It means ongoing payroll taxes to help prop up Social Security and other programs. It means more years of contributions into financial products that generate management fees. When headlines report that the average retirement age is rising, it's often framed as a positive choice. People staying active and working because they love it. For some, that's true. For many others, it's a polite way of saying, I can't afford to stop. Suppressing you work, the more you feed a system that was never designed to let you exit easily. You're told it's a personal failing if you can't hit the prescribed savings and timelines, instead of questioning why those benchmarks are so out of reach for the majority following the standard script. For a short slice of history, roughly the mid-20th century, widespread retirement at a reasonable age actually seemed attainable. Strong unions negotiated pensions, rapid growth lifted wages, housing was more affordable relative to income. Healthcare, while imperfect, didn't devour household budgets the way it does now. Priesthood created the cultural image many still carry: work 3 or 4 decades, then enjoy a long, stable, post-work phase supported by a mix of pension, savings, and Social Security. But that era was the exception, not the baseline of human experience. Before and after that window, most people worked until their bodies or minds couldn't anymore. The current system has quietly moved us back toward that older reality, but with more paperwork, more dashboards, and more talk about personal responsibility. The narrative didn't update when the underlying conditions changed. We kept the same age targets, the same expectations, and the same advice. Even as pensions vanished, costs soared, and volatility increased. Franz, you recognize that the traditional retirement picture was a product of specific, temporary circumstances. You stop waiting for those conditions to magically return. Instead, you start asking, what would a realistic path to autonomy look like in the world that actually exists today? Instead of asking, how do I retire at 65? A more useful question is, how soon can I cover my life with income that doesn't depend on a boss or a timesheet? That shift changes everything. It moves the focus from reaching a faraway age to reaching a specific financial condition. Your lifestyle costs are the key variable. The lower your necessary monthly expenses, the less passive or flexible income you need to support them. Someone who can live well on $2,500 a month has a much shorter path to independence than someone who needs $8,000 to feel stable. About housing, transportation, debt, and geography become powerful. Living in a lower-cost area, sharing resources, or redesigning your lifestyle can cut years off your dependence on traditional employment. At the same time, you look beyond simple saving toward assets that can produce cash flow. Small businesses, rentals, royalties, digital products, specialized services. The goal isn't never work again. It's never be forced into work you don't control just to survive. Once you stop worshiping a retirement age and start aiming at a freedom number, the game becomes concrete, measurable, and surprisingly flexible. The people who step outside the retirement trap tend to follow a very different playbook than the one promoted in glossy brochures. They treat traditional retirement tools as pieces of the puzzle, not the entire plan. They prioritize building skills and assets that can generate income without requiring constant presence, whether that's a small online business, specialized consulting, real estate, or creative work that can be monetized repeatedly. They pay close attention to taxes, understanding that structuring income through businesses or investments can dramatically change how much they keep. They're ruthless about aligning lifestyle with goals. That might mean driving a paid-off car instead of upgrading, choosing a smaller home, or relocating to a place where their money stretches further. To outsiders, those choices can look like sacrifice. To them, it's buying years of freedom. Most importantly, they stop expecting institutions to rescue them. They use the system where it helps: employer matches, tax advantages, smart investing. But never mistake those tools for a guarantee. The goal is not to become ultra rich. It's to reach a point where your basic life is funded without begging the system for permission. From there, work becomes optional, strategic, or mission-driven, not compulsory. If this breakdown made you uncomfortable, that's a good sign. It means some part of you recognizes that the comforting retirement story you grew up with doesn't match the reality you see around you. That disconnect isn't your fault, but what you do next is your responsibility. You can keep following the default script. Work until they tell you to stop, hope the numbers somehow add up, and blame yourself when they don't. Or you can start playing a different game, one built around independence instead of blind trust. On this channel, we dig into exactly that, how the money system is really structured, why normal advice keeps most people stuck, practical strategies for lowering your dependence on wages and building income streams you control. If you want shallow comfort, there are plenty of voices telling you, just keep contributing and you'll be fine. If you want clarity and are willing to face uncomfortable truths to protect your future, this is your place. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with this series. The system may be designed to keep you working forever, but once you understand the rules, you can start writing your own exit plan instead of waiting for permission that will never come.